Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started today. Hello, and welcome to the Manufacturing Alliance of Western Pennsylvania webinar series. My name is Carrie Mahelka with the Steel Valley Authority, and I'll be the moderator for today. A few quick housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone is muted from my end, but please also ensure that you're muted just in case anybody gets through there. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat box, which you'll see is available in your panel with an arrow that you can drop to open it up, and you can send me messages through there or ask questions. The default setting shows your questions to the entire group, but you do have the option of selecting a name and from the list of attendees. I will keep track of any questions for the speakers, which we'll answer at the Q&A session at the end of the presentations. So just briefly about us, the Steel Valley Authority SOAN program has been around for over 20 plus years, providing free turnaround services to small and medium-sized manufacturers throughout Pennsylvania. During this time, we've worked with more than 1,000 companies, saving 26,000 family-sustaining jobs. If you or a company you know is experiencing difficulties, have them contact us through our website, phone, or contact information here on the slide. The Manufacturing Alliance was started in 2018 with the intention of bringing manufacturers together for the purpose of helping other manufacturers. The Alliance hopes to take some of the most important topics we hear from owners and workers to provide workshops and webinars where we can share best practices and affordable practical solutions. If you're interested in becoming a part of the Alliance, please feel free to drop me a line. So to get started, you'll see from the screen that we brought together a couple of great experts from the field of cybersecurity. I'm sure each of them will share a little bit more about their backgrounds, but at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Agent McCune from the FBI and also Agent Matt Trosan, who is here with him.
Hi, folks. I'm Mike McCune with the FBI.
And I'm Matt Trosan with the FBI.
And we wanted to spend a little bit of time this morning getting you familiar with some of the cybercrime problems that we think are affecting small to medium-sized businesses. And I know there's a number of folks on this call from universities and maybe even some large corporations. But we want to go focus in on two main things: business email compromise and ransomware. So that's the first step. This is to scare you. Second step is to talk about some solutions. I know Carrie and Steel Valley Authority had some handouts that we gave them to provide to folks with more detailed information about business email compromise and ransomware. But I wanted to just kind of go over the problem that we see, an overview of that, some success that we've had here in Western PA, and then I think kick it over to Gary for more detailed information. So with that, the main thing we see is affecting a lot of folks is our phishing emails. We see that the bad guys do their homework. They research your companies, your organizations. They got a lot of information from the company website, but they also get it from your personal profiles. A lot of folks are happy with their jobs, but they're looking at other jobs. So they'll post a lot of their personal contact information as well in things like LinkedIn profiles, and that's good. But from a standpoint of the cyber criminal, that is also a place that they can gain a lot of information from. So what they want to do is get that information, spend the time understanding a little bit about your business, and what they typically want are folks that will answer an email. So if the phishing email will come in, targeted at somebody within the company, and they want you to get you to download the email. If it's a business email compromise, they typically will take the extra step of trying to find a person within a company that can move money. That can be anybody from the CEO to the administrative officer to the network administrator to CFO, anybody in there that has the ability to start moving money. They want to create a false sense of urgency and start that money moving in the business email compromise scheme that we see. In ransomware, they a little more basic. They want you to get a person within the company to open an email that will have the infected ransomware malware in the email and then infect your system and any other systems that your computer can touch within that organization. They then lock down those systems and ask for, it's in the name, ransom. So again, I went over this real quick, but the spear phishing, any email that it is pretending to be from somebody you know or create a false sense of urgency, a great deal that you can't pass up, or something you really want to look at. Hey, here are the new sales figures, open this PDF. And then you open the PDF, unbeknownst to you, if it's ransomware in the background, that ransomware malware will get downloaded to your computer and then lock up your computer and any other computers that your system can see or connect to. They could be within your organization or other interconnected communications, interconnected computers through your network, even to other companies or other organizations. What are they doing? They're looking to obtain passwords, financial information, company data. If it's in the business email compromise realm, they want to do their due diligence. It sounds funny to say that, but they want to get on the system, understand who moves money, who the executives are, and who they work with. So if I know the CEO is going to travel overseas, I need to know who the administrative assistant is to then, at the right time, as the CEO really does travel overseas, send an email to the executive administrative assistant to say, we have this great deal, we need you to send $1 million overseas. I can't talk right now, I'm on a plane. And they will have that information because they hacked into the CEO's email. So I'll get a little more into detail about that, but how did they get to that point? They understood the company data, they did their homework, they did their recon on the company. Sometimes that's from within the company. Once they've guessed one person's email or cracked an email within that corporate organization, they sit in the email system and watch, see what kind of emails go back and forth. So they're exploiting that trusted email center. So they try to get within that email. One of the simplest ones we see is that they'll guess the CEO's email password, sit in there. They'll create for the business email compromise specifically, I should say, they will guess the email password of the CEO as one example. And when they do that, they set up a quick rule. They say any brand new emails, send them to the trash can, and then the group of cyber fraudsters, and there could be a group of them, they will monitor that trash can 24/7. They will look for any new emails. If it's from the CEO's family, put it back in the inbox. If it's not about money, put it back into the inbox. So the CEO doesn't really notice anything different. But then one day, here comes an invoice for a shipment of steel for $300,000, and that's when they pounce. They see the PDF, they take that PDF, and they modify it to show their bank account and routing number, and they put that back into the inbox. And unbeknownst to the CEO, they then let that bill get paid, and it actually goes to their account. The other one is as I mentioned before, when you're looking at the CEO compromise, in particular version of business email compromise, they see that the CEO or somebody higher up in the company, like the COO, CFO, or the owner of the company, if it's a very small company, is about to travel, especially overseas. Once they see that, they know, because what do most people do? They have the e-tickets. They have their tickets sent to them via email, and then they print them out. But the bad guy also saw that. He'll still let the tickets go to the inbox, but he knows what time you're going to be in the air, literally. So that's when they'll strike. They'll wait until they believe you're actually in flight, and then go back to the administrative officer who they know from watching the email chain. And then they will start a false sense of urgency. It's me, the boss. I'm sorry, this is last minute, but we need $1 million sent to Ireland. And one way to thwart that, I talked about answers, is out-of-band authentication. For anybody in your organization, they should have the ability to go to the director, to the CEO, the CFO, or somebody in the executive management, and through the phone call, ask, hey boss, I know you're about to get on a flight, but did you really mean to send this $1 million wire? We had one just recently in Erie where the boss said, what wire? And they said, nothing, forget it, and it saved a lot of money. So the point being, when you do that out-of-band authentication, because if you send an email back to the boss, the bad guys will intercept it because they're watching the email anyway. So you want to be careful of the false sense of urgency, and you want to empower your folks to use what I call old school out-of-band authentication, which can be as simple as picking up the cell phone and making a call, and that way you could save your corporation a lot of money. When it comes to the ransomware, they want you to open a document, and that'll have usually an attachment in it where it'll have the malicious code, which will then get onto your system and lock it up. And again, in the ransomware case, they're not usually as interested in what kind of organization. They just want an organization that will pay the ransom. I'm going to lock up your computer, albeit for a few basic Windows operating system files, so that you can still get onto Windows to a degree and see that I've encrypted all of your hard drive. That's going to be important because that's my company data. That's my payroll. I've got to get that data back. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But in the ransomware version, they're not going to do as much recon about the company. I talked earlier about the recon. And when we're looking at recon, the social networking is where they get a lot of information. They'll get a lot of information about the executives at the company and the hierarchy of who in that company, who's the head of accounting. But they'll also then go, do I have a Facebook account for them? Do I have a LinkedIn account? Do I have any other accounts? Do I have a Gmail account? What we've seen, and this is not, I have a Gmail account, so I'm not disparaging Gmail at all, but if you want to reset my password, you send me an email that says I'm with Google and there's been a problem with your Gmail account, I need to reset your password. We've seen fraudsters use this a number of times, and what they then do is they let you reset your password, but they also saw your password. So I'm on my home computer and I have my Gmail account, but then I also have a VPN connection back into my network. Guess what? They can also see that. So because I'm remote, but I'm still able to work from home, they've now gone to the weakest link, which are the free email services, Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo, and been able to get into that account, and then sometimes pivot into looking at my computer, getting a keystroke logger, watching my connections back into the corporate network. So sometimes they'll go from the weakest link. But also, as I mentioned before, when you're looking at Monster.com, LinkedIn, Career Builder, all those services, who are very cooperative, by the way. When we work a lot with them, but you give up a lot of information: your personal cell phone number, your personal email account, your history, your background, where you're from, where you might be going back to. So you give a lot of information out there, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. Just be cognizant of the amount of information that these fraudsters can find out about you if you are a person in a corporation that can move that money, or an organization like a university. So, ransomware. Rather than reading this large definition to you, it's very simple. Get the malware onto a computer and make it look like something innocuous, like a Word document, a PDF. My goal is simply to get somebody to click on that link and download, unbeknownst to them, open up the attachment, get the malware onto my system, and then it will lock up that computer. And as a fraudster, I largely will take any computer network that I can lock up. So if it's a whole city, which we'll get to in a minute, or just an individual in a small business, either one, I want them to pay. It may be a detail depending on which ransomware group I happen to be a part of, if I care what the organization is, but as long as they pay, I win. As I mentioned earlier, I need to get the ransomware on there, start encrypting the hard drives and any other attached network drives, and then ask for the ransom. Create a short time, again, create a false sense of urgency that they have to pay by a certain time, and then find a vehicle to make that payment. It's usually going to be through virtual currency. And a lot of folks on this call will probably say, I don't know how to get any Bitcoin or virtual currency. Unfortunately, the ransomware fraudsters have figured that out. They will actually give you instructions of how to take U.S. currency and put it into Bitcoin and other virtual currency. So with that, and by the way, that's not the only way that they can get it, but that's the one we see targeted at businesses. So one of the biggest ones we saw recently, or I should say over the last couple of years, was a ransomware called SamSam. SamSam was actually kind of focused. It was a group that was doing this out of Iran, I believe, and the group was focused largely on healthcare facilities. They knew that a lot of the healthcare facilities Once they get small to medium-sized healthcare facilities, once they were infected, they needed to free up those systems because that's patient record, patient data. They needed to free up the systems so they would pay the ransom. Once one of them paid the ransom, that's where this group, my personal belief is that they focused in on, wait, one healthcare facility paid, so others will pay, and unfortunately, there was some truth to that. So they had a target audience. But then they went real big. They infected the city of Atlanta. So the ransom, even though you have the whole city of Atlanta locked down with this ransomware, they only asked for $52,000. It cost several million, and as you can see, the estimates were over $2.6 million to recover from the ransomware, when the ransom itself was only $52,000. So it is quite possible they didn't know what they had infected or locked down, but the trusted relationship of networks within the city of Atlanta were such that it spread across that network and created $2.6 million of damage. I'm saying this only to make a point that if my systems don't need to be connected, don't connect them. If Matt, sitting here with me, if his computer, my computer don't need to be connected, then break that connection. And that means if I get infected, it's only on my computer. Matt could still be up and functioning. It at least minimizes the problem of how wide this can spread. So worked a little bit with our Atlanta office and our Newark field office for this. So again, targeted schools, hospitals, and then this whole city. One of the things that we also do, and specifically within ransomware, is we, the FBI, advocate not paying. And people ask why. I need my data back. Well, there's two examples of this. Right now on the screen, I have the NotPetya ransomware. And NotPetya was ransomware sent out, it's coming up on probably 2 years ago. And basically what happened was Russia, we believe Russian GRU officers tried to shut down some facilities in Ukraine. What they did was they sent out ransomware called Petya. They modified it slightly and called it NotPetya. And they sent that ransomware and they targeted it at a free accounting software company that was based out of Ukraine. A lot of us have that live update where we update our antivirus software, and this company did the same thing with their accounting software. You get an update. They slipped it into the update. But the problem, people around the world use it, and it's listed right there, the MeDoc software. When MeDoc did an update, there were companies all around the US and around the world that got infected with the NotPetya ransomware. Why is that important? Not only did it shut these companies down, but they were never going to unlock them. They were never going to decrypt them. So if anybody had paid in the NotPetya ransomware situation, it's doubly bad because they were never going to get unlocked. So that's another reason that we advocate not paying. And the other one we know also came out of North Korea was WannaCry. So we saw some examples where there were state-sponsored ransomware that even if you got infected and wanted to get unlocked, if you paid, it was never going to get unlocked.
So Mike brings up a great point. So in the world of ransomware, there's essentially two schools of thought. There's the financially motivated actors who want to get paid, and then there's the non-financially motivated folks who don't care and frankly aren't looking for that money. They're basically trolls. They're just trying to screw with you or wreak havoc with the system. And that's what Mike mentioned with NotPetya. So not paying is really in your best interest because you just don't know who you're dealing with. And even if you do pay, there's not a guarantee. In fact, there's probably a better chance that you're not going to get your files back anyhow.
Correct. And to build on Matt's point, nation state, they're looking to wreak destruction on lockdown systems, whether they be specifically aimed at the U.S. or in the case of NotPetya, the U.S. was collateral damage. And with that, there are some solutions to this. One is updating your systems, so that can help mitigate that to a degree. A lot of the folks that were affected by NotPetya, had they updated their operating systems, they, in a lot of cases, could have prevented that infection, ransomware infection. Now, the one thing we did do, specifically in NotPetya, realizing that Russia had sent this out to attack Ukraine specifically, and then created collateral damage across the world. I learned a new word February of last year, which was demarche. FBI coordinated with the White House and world partners and brought in a lot of the Russia representatives to our embassies and told them, bad, don't do that again. And then very publicly had statements out there. So February 15th of last year, oddly enough, I guess that's a 1-year anniversary. I didn't even think about that. We demarched demarched Russia for sending out the NotPetya ransomware. So again, there are real world and large scale ramifications to these actions, but some may be nation state sponsored. With that, I'll change back to business email compromise. Unfortunately, we see this area growing. With business email compromise, the goal is to get into your email system and get in the middle of a transaction or create a false sense of urgency. But mainly, when you're looking at the slide I have on the screen now, I talked a lot about these earlier. Identify a target. They accumulate confidential information. We talked about how they'll look up the person that is a money mover within a company or the executives who by default probably can move money, and they'll get that information from LinkedIn, your personal email accounts, and then they'll do what's called grooming. Like I talked about earlier, sitting on the email system, seeing when the executive is going to travel, seeing when a new order, payment for a new order is coming in, or needs to, more importantly, be sent out. They slip their own bank accounts and routing information into your otherwise accounts payable invoice that's usually a PDF. And then with the CEO traveling, they create that false sense of urgency. Hey, I'm overseas. It's me, the boss. You need to send $1 million. I know this. I don't usually do this, but I'll lose the business deal if this doesn't happen. That's where you kick into the out-of-band, old-school authentication, call your boss. If you're the boss, and allow your folks to call you and leave that door open for them to double check to see if you really did send that email, or in some cases it might be an instant message, but we see it mainly with email. And question the instructions. Right? Until this point, I've been talking about business email compromise where there's a false sense of urgency or they slip into a pre-existing payment. Unfortunately, one of the biggest ones, and I have it right there on the top left-hand side, real estate. For anybody who has had purchased a house, purchased a building, purchased anything, when you get to closing, right as you're about to go to closing, the day before usually, or the day of, the wire for the closing costs will come in. And that's the urgency that they don't even have to create. We have seen an exponential increase in real estate transaction frauds, where they watch settlement companies, real estate companies, they watch the transaction, they know what day is closing, the day before closing, somebody involved in the closing, usually the buyer will get an email that, oh, the account's changed, send it to this email, send it to this account with a bank account and routing number, but everything else is still good, we'll still see you on Friday for closing, and they get to closing and the other person's like, asks, where's the money? And unfortunately, the bad guys have intercepted that money at the last minute. They sent the wire to them rather than to the closing. So they, in that scenario of business email compromise, they did not have to create the false sense of urgency. It was already there in the real estate. And we mainly see it in wire transfers. There have been some ACH, but we largely see it as a wire because they want to get that money out quickly. They don't want to wait for the overnight transaction. So they're usually going to do a wire. And again, once they get the money out, they sometimes can do it domestically. They have money mules here in the U.S. We've got our hands on some of them, and I'll show an example of that in a minute. Where do they do some of this 24/7 watching of the email? We've seen a fair amount, but not all, from Ghana, Nigeria, and we have had some success going after folks, and I'll show an example of that in a minute. So they'll look at a number of different places to get money mules, the folks that could take the money out, keep a cut for themselves, and then send the rest of the money domestically or more likely back overseas to West Africa, Europe, or places like Eastern Europe and Russia. One of the other ones, we don't see it as much, but we even see some of the hackers that do business email compromise, they get a lot of data. What they do is they will get you to open a PDF or sneak it in, and in the background, it will download a keystroke logger. What you see on your screen now is an example of one of those keystroke loggers. It can take screen captures, so you're typing in your password or you have it saved on your screen, they can actually see it as you type it. So even though it's obfuscated, once you hit send, they can see it right then and there. They can see so much more, your calls, your messages, again, talk about knowing your target. There's so much they can do with the keystroke logger, and all they need to do is get you to open one email with an attachment and get this downloaded in the background. They can be as little as $25 to buy on the dark web, so they don't even have to be that technical. They just have to know where to go to buy the keystroke logger, and then have to use the social engineering skills to slip it into your emails to get you to download it. Fortunately, we haven't seen too much of that, but that has come up. Suspicious emails, again, rather than reading the whole definition there for you, just remember, if it's a false sense of urgency, we used to see this a little bit more in the telemarketing side. When the phone rings, we're in the customer service business. Everybody wants to make everybody happy, or you want to put out that fire. Stop, ask, did I ask for this fire? Did I ask for this call? Why is this person emailing me when I don't know them? What is this false sense of urgency? Let me, before I jump on it, find out a little bit more. And again, I keep going back to old school out-of-band authentication. Let me pick up the phone and call somebody because I got an email. If they're in the email system and I ask questions, I might not get the right answer because the bad guys always want you to send the money and always tell you it's real. So just be careful of that. Don't fall for this false sense of urgency. And for the ransomware, be careful of what you click on. But even before that, and again, a lot of these are outlined in our PDFs that we have. Be careful of your trusted systems. If my network doesn't need to be connected to my office, my internet email is not connected to my case files. So even if my personal internet email or my work internet email is hacked or gets ransomware on it, it won't affect my criminal case file. So they are different networks. So with that, again, social media, I think I've talked about that. We put a lot of information out there. Just be cognizant the bad guys may have that information. And that's where they know when you're going to travel. They know what your family situation is. They may even know what your work situation, that you're looking for a new job. They may know that you do a lot of work from home. So then you're most likely, if you do work from home, you have a laptop with usually a virtual private network connection back into your corporate network. In that case, as a fraudster, I'm looking for the weakest link, which is your laptop, which will give me a highway right back into your corporation. Some good news. So this is a case that we worked starting in 2016. It was an email scam, and there was a real estate deal in Wilmington, Delaware. $411,000 was stolen, and the fraudsters, the money mules, were actually here in Pittsburgh. Maybe a little bit difficult to read here, but the actual amount of the real estate wire was $411,548, and it went to Pittsburgh. We started following the money. We found several individuals here in Pittsburgh. I had just returned as a squad supervisor, so my squad asked if I wanted to go out on a search and arrest. I'm like, yes, I've been in headquarters too long. So we went out and we arrested our two subjects at our residence, and as a side note, got lucky. There was a third resident there. The house, unbeknownst to us, had been divided into an apartment, and there was a Pittsburgh City fugitive hiding upstairs. So bonus, we got a Pittsburgh City fugitive off the streets as well. So he was nice enough, by the way, when we got him outside of the plasterboard wall that he was hidden in, he admitted right away that he was wanted by the Pittsburgh police. So they were with us for the search, so we turned him over. So a win. But bottom line, we worked with our individuals. There were two arrested here in the Brookline section of the Pittsburgh City, several in Aliquippa. They were using a auto shop, and they were sending money out through that as a front for money laundering. Those three individuals rolled over another individual in Atlanta. We had that individual arrested, and the individual in Atlanta, we had him extradited back up to Pittsburgh. He rolled over on a subject in Nigeria, and this past summer, we had that individual arrested as part of a bigger cyber takedown. We called it Operation Wire. We had a number of subjects in Nigeria that were arrested. As you can see here, 42 in the U.S., 29 in Nigeria. One of was our subject who had done the email hacking of the original victim in Wilmington, Delaware. So kind of following that from the beginning, they got in the middle of a real estate transaction, actually a fairly lucrative one, for $411,000. They got the wire sent domestically. The cash outs were here in Pittsburgh. We worked with our Baltimore FBI office because they happen to cover Wilmington, Delaware. And we brought the agent from Baltimore here to Pittsburgh. He was out with us for some of the searches, and the two FBI field offices worked it together. We were able to recoup the money and go after four individuals, including an individual in Nigeria. We are looking and trying and still working to get the individual in Nigeria extradited back to the U.S. Three of the four subjects that we have arrested have been indicted and pled guilty in Pittsburgh. The fourth one, who was a Ghana national, is going to trial. Why? Because if he's found guilty, he's deportable. So right now, in fact, this morning I heard his case was delayed till May.
Right.
So we have one case outstanding on that. So 3 convictions, 3 confessions, 3 folks guilty, 1 going to trial, and then waiting for 1 extradition out of Nigeria. So with that, I'll kind of wrap it up and I think kick it over to Gary, if I'm not mistaken.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to delete all of my social media accounts now and stop using Google Mail, obviously. So right now, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Gary, and let's see if we can get him online here. Okay, Gary, you there?
I am here.
All right, screen's all yours.
Okay, and just go ahead. Just a thumbs up. I assume everyone can see my screen now.
We're good.
Okay, take silence as concurrence. Okay, so my name's Gary Manns. I am here to represent GWM CyberSecurity. And as Carrie mentioned, we specialize in assisting small to medium-sized businesses with cybersecurity matters. So a little bit about myself is, as mentioned before, I have a bachelor's and master's degree in information security. I am currently pursuing my PhD in information security. I'm currently in my dissertation phase, and my dissertation topic is an analysis of cybersecurity best practices in small to medium-sized businesses. So I definitely have an interest in understanding how cybersecurity affects small businesses. Some of my industry certifications include the CISSP, which is a standard for many security professionals. I also have the ISO 27001, which is the International Standards Organization certificate that focuses around cybersecurity. And I do have my ethical hacking and forensics investigators certificate through EC Console. So that's a little bit about myself. My presentation outline, I'm going to talk about why small business owners and executives should care about cybersecurity, some recent trends that elevate the cyber risk for small businesses, and the role business owners and executives play in managing cybersecurity. I will probably rehash a little bit of what Agent McCown said, so you might see some duplication there, but I'll try to keep that to a minimum. Moving on, cybersecurity risk. So I'm going to, next couple slides are really going to throw some numbers and some metrics out for everyone to see why cybersecurity for small businesses is at risk. According to Kaspersky Labs back in 2018, the average cybersecurity incident in the regards of a data breach came in at about $120,000 per cyber incident. And on top of the cost to take care of the data breach from a fines and legal standpoint, many data breaches actually also damage your reputation as a small business regarding protecting data. So Verizon back in 2018 also issued a report that 58% of malware attack victims are categorized as small businesses. So the reason behind that is the cyber criminals out there, they know that the security posture of small businesses are not as strong as larger corporations. So they are easier targets. And that's just not from a network security standpoint, but also from a social engineering standpoint. Agent McCown briefly touched about phishing earlier on. The cyber criminals are preying on those small businesses because they know that those small business employees might not have a thorough of an understanding of cybersecurity risks and phishing emails and social engineering techniques that make them successful. The last important bullet on this slide, I just wanted to reinforce that small businesses are just as likely to be victims as large corporations. we're just less likely to hear about those small businesses in the news because they don't have the eye-popping dollar amount figures that are associated with large corporation data breaches. So just a couple of recent surveys. 40% of small business has had at least one cyber attack in the past year. 44% of those had two or more. So once again, it just reinforces the notion that cyber criminals are targeting small to medium-sized businesses. So to Agent McCown touch a little bit about malware. So I wanted to go and give an example of some different types of malware. One of the most common ones, as Agent McCown mentioned, was ransomware. That is, the big one out there that a lot of cyber criminals are using to attack their victims, either for profit or for destruction. So on top of ransomware, there's also Trojan horses. So as Agent McNown mentioned, opening a Word document or opening up a PDF attachment, that technically, they use that cyber criminals use that as an avenue to infect your computer. So just like the old, the term Trojan horse came all the way back from the Greek times, but it still holds true in a cyber community. They send you a legit file or a legit program, hoping that you would open it, and in reality, they're infecting your computer with some malicious intent. Viruses, on top of Trojan horses and ransomware, viruses are designed to spread from system to system. So as it was touched about earlier, if you have a computer and it's connected to a network of computers, the virus will spread from computer to computer, even though that you might not have permissions to that computer or that remote computer. Viruses are still able to spread. Same thing with the worm. These are more common types of malware out there that, once again, spreads from computer to computer, and they look for vulnerabilities in operating systems and software as a way to spread from throughout the network. Some common tips to help protect against common cybersecurity threats. As Agent McCown mentioned earlier, keep your systems up to date. If you're using Microsoft operating systems such as Windows 10 or Windows 7, make sure that you're updating all the applicable security updates or critical updates. As Microsoft is aware or becomes aware of these vulnerabilities in their operating system, they're going to release those updates to help mitigate those risks. Equally as important in regards to updates is third-party software. Everyone, I'm sure, has some sort of dependency on Adobe or Java or some other third-party application. Those third-party software vendors are also addressing vulnerabilities and releasing patches to mitigate those vulnerabilities. So it's equally as important to make sure that you're updating both your operating system and your software. On top of that, it's a best practice to use subscription-based antivirus, anti-malware software. Subscription-based software has a tendency to get protections out quicker than the freeware antivirus software. So that is just another best practice. On top of that, use supported operating systems and software. To touch on the first bullet point there, it's a best practice to make sure that you're using an operating system that is still getting updates. So when those vulnerabilities are discovered, they're doing something about them. Hopefully, anyone who is using XP, Windows XP, or an older version of Microsoft, you're planning to get off of there, because the cyber criminals are still going to target the people who are still running Windows XP, and Microsoft will not do anything about it to close those vulnerabilities. So a big one there is just to make sure that you're using supported operating systems and software. So some recent high-profile data breaches. I think Agent McCown showed some or shared some local success stories, but some other big ones out there, such as the Target data breach of 2013. This data breach was actually this happened because they gained access to a cyber criminal actually attacked a third party and gained access to that third party's network and used that as a jump point into Target's network. So As Agent McCallum touched on before, if your computer doesn't need to talk to other computers or other networks, it's a best practice that you don't allow that to happen. And the target data breach was a result of that. The actual company that was part of that data breach that actually led to the target data breach was a company right here in Western Pennsylvania. They were a small HVAC company that they fell victim to a phishing email as the cyber criminals were doing their reconnaissance on that network. They saw that they had a connection to target and used that as a jump point in. So once again, just shows or reinforces the reconnaissance phase, and they didn't intend to attack target out of this, but they were able to infiltrate target. The Equifax data breach of 2017, that one was because of a vulnerable website. So the actual website that Equifax used was not using up-to-date software. They were using outdated code. So that was another example of keeping your software up to date. That is what led to the contributing factors of the Equifax data breach. Another big one was the OPM data breach. They gained access, once again, similar to the target, through a third party. They were compromised, similar to the same exact way target was. The last one here on this slide is the Home Depot data breach, where they actually infected the POS systems that everyone uses at Home Depot. So when you go and make that transaction, they actually attacked those POS systems, which in most cases are running some variant of Windows or some other operating system. So once again, they infected that system with malware, and they were able to move laterally throughout Home Depot, then ultimately exfiltrate the information out. So a couple more metrics here for you guys. Cybersecurity trends. Everyone is trying to do more from their mobile phones, right? Everyone has their mobile phones with them at all times, looking at emails, looking at websites, social media. Number of malware that were specifically designed for mobile phones increased 54% in 2017. So the cyber criminals out there know that everyone is looking, has their mobile phones attached to them at all times, and they're using it for business purposes. So, cyber criminals are now starting to target mobile devices. Spam emails continue to rise. Just from 2016 to 2017, 55% increase in the number of spam emails that are being received by individuals. Everyone is starting to look at utilizing cloud. Cloud is something that is attractive for small to medium-sized businesses because you can keep your costs down from an IT standpoint. While cyber criminals know that companies are starting to migrate all their data into the cloud, so no longer does sensitive information live locally on the computers; they live on the cloud. So those threat actors are now targeting cloud providers to try to get a strong hold of that data. And on top of that, attackers are easily finding ways around antivirus software and anti-malware software. While I said in a few slides back, it's important to have that. That is just one line of defense. The concept of defense in depth definitely is something that everyone should be mindful of. Knowing that just having antivirus software running on your computer might not be sufficient enough. You need to take additional measures of isolating computers. You need to bring awareness to your staffs. So that is something you need to consider. Another topic I wanted to talk about this afternoon was cybersecurity regulations. Protecting sensitive data is everyone's responsibility, regardless if it's your own employees' sensitive information or it's your customer sensitive information. Everyone has a obligation to protect it. Depending on the industry that you are in, there are actual regulatory requirements, such as HIPAA, such as Gramm-Leach-Bliley, such as the Homeland Security Act. There are also state and local regulations that you have to adhere to. If you accept credit card payments, you have an industry. You have a PCI DSS is another regulatory, well, they're not a regulatory body, but another body that looks to control how sensitive data is protected, such as credit card information. So some cybersecurity best practices in general, they typically break them down into categories. The first category is prevent. The way you prevent is you involve and educate all levels of employees of the organization about current cybersecurity threats. Cybersecurity threats are constantly changing from month to month, week to week. So, it's important to understand what are all the new tactics out there that cyber criminals are using as a way to attack your organization. Another way to help with this is have a formal budgeting process in place to dedicate funds to cybersecurity. You know, antivirus software, firewalls, training. Those are all items that, if you could budget for those, it makes it that much less of an impact to your bottom line. The next one is detect. As I mentioned, there detect or protecting your information goes far beyond just having antivirus software or anti-malware software. There are other tools out there such as intrusion detection systems that's going to monitor all your traffic to see if your network is being compromised or your network is under attack. Track violations, generate alerts. These are also things you can understand that, okay, you're able to see what attacks were successful, what attacks weren't. Record all incidents, regardless of the events. You want to make sure that you're able to share that information. So if you are attacked or you are compromised, you're able to share with lessons learned, or if it comes to reporting requirements, you have a thorough documentation of all the efforts that you made. Mitigate, create a plan. One of the slides I'll talk about later is business continuity and disaster recovery. Those are two types of plans that you'll be able to rely on if you do have an incident, that you can recover to normal operations as quickly as possible. Make sure in those plans that you have clear lines of roles and responsibilities. So when there is an incident, everyone isn't just pointing the finger at each other, or no one knows what to do. You have clear lines of roles and responsibilities. Once again, review your response plans regularly, quarterly, semi-monthly, or semi-annually, yearly. There is guidance out there depending on the industry that you fall under, what your requirement is there. Last one on this best practice list is ensure against financial risk with a standalone cyber policy or endorsement. That kind of leads the segue into data breach insurance. Every insurance company out there is now recommending some sort of data breach insurance to help your business in the event that you do have a data breach. So a couple points I'd like to talk about there are, data breach is not an all-encompassing umbrella. There are specific uses of data breach insurance. One is to help pay for legal representation. If your company is, if you do experience a data breach, you will have legal obligations to report it to who and to when and by when. So this is something that data breach insurance would help pay for. Fines and penalties. Once again, if you have sensitive data and you do have a data breach that results in the loss of sensitive information, there are in most cases going to be fines and penalties associated with that. So data breach insurance will help augment those costs. It will also help pay for forensic investigations to determine root cause of what caused the data breach, to ensure that you can recover or protect yourself from future data breaches that you fell victim to. It will also help with reporting requirements. Once again, knowing who you have to report to. Do you have to report? Of course, you have to report to your stakeholders, but do you have to report to some governing body? As I mentioned earlier in one of the slides, it doesn't necessarily help you with a damage to your reputation. You can't recover that loss of income because your vendors or your customers have lost confidence in your company to safeguard data. If you've ever looked at the looking into data breach, the application for obtaining data breach insurance is often complex, and it has terminology that can be confusing. And once again, it doesn't. These are cautions that you need to take into account when you're looking at data breach insurance. A lot of times, data breach insurance, before a agency will even offer you a policy, they want you to demonstrate that you do have sound cybersecurity practices in place. Is your company running antivirus software? Do you have policies for user acceptance or the internet usage policy? Do you have business continuity plans in place? Do you have disaster recovery plans in place? One of the things that I wanted to stress here is, do you have backups? To piggyback back off of what Agent McCown said, if you are a victim of ransomware, and if you choose not to pay the ransom, how do you recover from a ransomware attack? Your computer are all compromised. If you do not have a backup of your data, in most cases, you will not be able to recover. So once again, having those, a data backup policy will help in the time of need, such when you're a victim of a ransomware attack. So to close out, how can GWM Cybersecurity help? We can help evaluate your current IT cybersecurity posture. We can assist your company with writing those policies and procedures to help safeguard your company, such as the data backup, business continuity, disaster recovery. We can also help with providing security awareness training. As I mentioned before, the cyber threat landscape is constantly changing. Cyber criminals, unfortunately, are one step ahead of the good guys. We can help your company understand what the current trends are from a cybersecurity attack vector. It can help you ensure you're compliant with your regulatory obligations, such as HIPAA or Gramm-Leach-Bliley or any state or regulatory or local regulation requirements. And for more information, you can contact us there. So that concludes my portion of the slide deck, and I think we'll turn it back over to Carrie, and we can go if there's any questions from there.
All right, great. Thanks, Gary. Did anybody have any questions? I was typing on the screen about the chat box and the question box. If you had any questions for our presenters that they can address for you, feel free to drop them in there. If not, what we will be doing is we will be sending out a follow-up with just a little bit of a brief survey asking your interest. Was there anything that was covered in today's webinar that you'd like to learn more about, that we can either provide a follow-up webinar on that, or that we can provide some in-person training for you, whatever the case may be. Feel free to do so. And let me see, do you have a question here? Sorry, I'm trying to pull the box up to see what they're. I have someone asking, am I safe from email scams as long as I do not open the attachments? So Gary or Agent McCune, can you address that?
Yeah, I could try. I'll do it with Gary's help. I mean, you're much safer if you don't touch the attachments. You want to be careful of a couple things. Where did it come from? Without knowing your corporate network, I would still be cautious, but certainly you're much better not attach them. Gary, I'll kind of kick it over to you, but I'm just thinking with some of the drive-by attachments and the links, even with that, there's some place to say that I can't say you'd be 100% secure, but much more secure if you're not touching the attachment. So with that, I'll kick it over to Gary for your take.
Yeah, thank you, Agent. I definitely agree with that approach. If you do not expect the attachment, or it just seems odd that someone who you typically do not do business with is sending you attachments, you definitely want to use caution. On top of that, not only attachments, but links inside of emails. A lot of times, if you just hover over that link, it will show you the actual URL that you would be redirected to. So while it might say click here for Microsoft.com, when in reality, when you hover over that link, it will redirect you to some compromised website. So equally as important as not opening the attachment, but also making sure that you're not clicking on links that might redirect you to a compromised website.
Yeah, and if I can just throw in my own 2 cents, I know from our organization here, there's been times when I've received emails from someone who we might think is a partner organization, but I know we don't deal with them on a regular basis, and it'll be an email that says something like, "Hey, here's a copy of our contract or our sales agreement," and I know that we don't have a sales agreement or anything like that with them. So my best practice is always just I've actually replied to one of those emails and got it. Oh yeah, this is yours. Don't worry. And then I knew better and made the follow up phone call, and it definitely was not that person, and they found out that they had been hacked. And so yeah, I just do your due diligence and also put that out to your employees to do. So uh, second question I got: is there one virus protection software that either of you would recommend over another? Um, Agent, if we can go with you first, anything that you know of?
I'm sorry, Gary, was that for me?
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, they were asking about any kind of virus protection software you would recommend.
Um, the big names are out there, so I'm not here to advocate for one over another. I would say there's maybe 7 to 10 big name antivirus companies out there. The main thing is, and again, I'll kick it over to Gary as well, but would be what they call live updates. That's one time where you do want to get those, because you're going to buy it on Monday, and then by Monday afternoon, there's going to be more malware, more phishing websites, more malicious activity out there that you need those live updates. Anything from Symantec to McAfee to companies like that are some of the biggest ones that I'm aware of. Depending on where you're at in the world, there are other international ones that other countries like better. But those are a couple of the big ones. And I'm sorry, you Matt.
Norton is another one.
Yeah. So there's a number of big names out there. Those are usually the trusted ones. And then when you do the live updates, when you log on, it'll try to pull down either links or digital signatures of malware that it can detect right away. And it could be as it's 2 o'clock. So at 2:15 there could be a new malware. By 2:20, Norton, Trend Micro, McAfee, whoever it might be, might have that signature, and then download it by 3 o'clock. And after 3 o'clock, I'm safe. Well, relatively safe. So with that, I'll kick it over to Gary.
Okay, Gary, any thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. So to build on that, I definitely agree. There are there are leaders in the industry that do offer the protections out there. My recommendation is always look for which ones are going to offer you the most bells and whistles, for lack of better terms, where it not only does it do antivirus software and it does anti-malware, but it might also have safe browsing plugins that are actually built in that you can integrate with your browser, where your keystrokes might be monitored, or it might understand that you're going to a financial website, and it might natively encrypt your transmissions. So once again, just looking at which ones offer more of a suite of solutions versus just anti-malware and antivirus software capabilities.
Okay, great. I don't seem to have any other questions popping up, but I guess we'll go ahead and close it out here. Again, if anyone has any other questions that we can provide follow-up and get you in touch with either of our speakers, please send me a message. That's my email up on the screen, and I'm also the one who was sending you out the invitations for the webinar. We appreciate your time today and participation, and we hope to see you at a future webinar. Thank you very much.